Today marks the 85th birthday of Jack Charlton. Jack is a huge figure in football. He was a member of England's World Cup winning team. He played, amazingly, 629 league games for Leeds and 762 games for Leeds altogether. He was a one-club player and, of course, most importantly, from our perspective, he's somebody who had a major impact on our life, not just our football life, but our cultural life, for the 10 years that he was manager of the Irish team from 1986 to 1996. And to discuss Jack and to, we hope, give a rounded and definitive view of this extraordinary character, I'm joined by John Giles, who was with Jack for 10, 11, 12 years at Leeds, and by Liam Brady, one of our greatest players, who played for Jack in the Irish team. And of course, I have my own experiences as a journalist with Jack, but that's less important. John, thank you very much for doing this.
No bother, Eamon.
Researching Jack's remarkable career, one of the most striking things is that before Don Revie arrived to take over at Leeds, Jack hadn't been a good boy always. He wasn't a dedicated pro. And you know a bit about those sort of times and how close Jack came to being booted by Don Revie.
Very close, Eamon. Actually, Don played with him, you see.
Right.
So he knew him. He knew him well. And when Don then took over as manager, he knew all the bad boys, Eamon. Because Leeds were having a very, very bad time. They were going nowhere. And Jack was one of the leading bad boys.
Yeah.
Apparently, when they put the circuit up, like with the weights and that, up on the training ground, the bad boys would come along and throw them down the side of the pitch.
Yeah.
And Jack was one of them. So I think when Don took over, he had Jack in straight away and said, look, you're on your way.
Right.
Unless you get a grip of yourself.
Yeah.
Which he did in a big way, because he wasn't a young fella at that time.
No, indeed.
You know.
It's that's true. And in fact, I will come to it later, but he was just coming up to 30 when he made his debut for England, which is amazing. But
I think he was a bit younger than that, Eamon.
Well, maybe,
well,
okay.
He was, but he was an experienced certainly player.
He certainly was, yeah.
At that particular time, I think he was only about 20. Well, not only 27. He was getting on a bit anyway in terms of players who should have been established at that particular time. So Don did get a grip of him, or he warned him. And to be fair to Jack, he did get a grip of himself there and then became a really, really top player.
Now, when you went there in '63, it was a big investment for Leeds. How did you find Jack and how did he react to your arrival?
He was okay. I had met him a couple of times, and he used to come over to see Bobby at Manchester.
Yeah.
So I didn't know him very well, but I obviously had met him. But he was fine. He was Jack is a peculiar personality in many ways. Eamon, he wouldn't make a fuss of you. You know,
yes.
You're just there. Actually, I used to strip beside him when I went to Leeds, and he was okay. He was fine. Jack lived in a world of his own. You know,
yes.
And while you'd be there, and if it suited Jack, it suited him. If it didn't suit him, it didn't suit him. You know,
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that was his character. And like a lot of people could say, well, how did you get on with him? But Jack was Jack, and what he was, Eamon, he was honest in his ways. You know, he was peculiar. He was odd. He could be ignorant at times, but he wasn't dishonest.
Yeah, one of the things
you knew where you were with him. You know?
Yeah, don't tell me. Just about you at that time, and really when I knew you, for a very long time, you were a major prankster. You were always up to mischief. It's hard to think that you're Freeman of Dublin City now, and that you're a very serious.
I'm a lot older, Eamon.
Grand old man of Irish soccer, but you're a messer. And you told me a very funny story, which I'm sure Liam will recognise from your past, when Jack used to go to the toilet before training and read his copy of the Daily Mirror.
Well,
most players did that, except me. I was reading the Guardian. Now, tell us about that story, because it's great.
That was later on. It was on a Monday, Eamon.
Yeah.
And Monday training wasn't good. It was sort of the circuit, and it wasn't the enjoyable training.
Yeah.
And Leeds was a cold time in the winter, really cold time in the winter.
Yeah.
So when we would come in from training there, you'd be very cold. And the toilet we had at Leeds was an outside toilet.
Right.
It wasn't in the dressing room.
Yeah.
And one morning we came in when nobody was in a good mood, didn't enjoy it, and he said, "Right, and I'm going to be a bit crude here. I'm going for a crap." I don't know why he was telling everybody. He took a paper out with him, crossed the corridor, and Alan Clark and myself said, "Right, we'll have a bit of a laugh with Jack." You see, so we went out, and there was a thing for the gear, like a bin for the gear, and we put loads, filled it up with freezing cold water.
Yep.
And the toilet Jack was in, it was an open toilet, so we got a thing and we climbed up, got this big thing up, and just hooshed it up over the toilet and just plopped it straight in. And we could hear Jack go, "Oh!" See, but Jack didn't take jokes very well. I mean, he didn't take jokes. So he came in. His hair was all wringing wet. The towel he had on was wringing wet.
Yeah.
And he slammed the paper on the thing. He says, "That's it." He said, first of all, he looked at me. He said, "It wasn't me, Jack. Alan Clark." He didn't like Alan Clark very much. Didn't have a go at him. And he said, "Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'll guarantee you one thing. Nobody will ever go in there and have a crap in peace again." and then he said, which was typical, "And by the way, you didn't even get me." and the towel was wringing wet, his hair was wringing wet, but he was like a kid. "You didn't even get me." So that's it. But he never found out who it was.
No, but I'm sure he knew who the chief suspects.
Yeah.
The point I want to get to is, as a player then, John, how good was he? How important was he? Because Don Revie was bringing a lot of young players like Peter Lorimer, Eddie Gray, into the side, Norman Hunter. How good was Jack when he put his mind to it, stopped the messing during the week and played? How good was he?
Yeah, well, he wasn't a good trainer.
No.
But anyway, that's by the way. When he played, and he was very good. I think he was the best centre-half in England for about 5 years.
Right.
Now, he wasn't great. He wasn't great with the young lads.
Yeah.
If it didn't suit him, he'd have a go at them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jack was in a world of his own in that way. But when he buckled down, he was amazing. He was a big, stringy sort of lad, but he covered the ground really well. He was good in the air, and balls over the top. There was nobody who'd beat him for pace. He was deceptive in that way, and he was a good defender with both feet. If you're getting the ball away, he was well balanced on both sides to get it away.
Yes.
And didn't take any chance. And was obviously scored a lot of important goals coming up from corner kicks and free kicks.
Yeah.
But the thing is with Jack, Jack was in a world of his own. I know I used to take Billy Bremner himself, he used to take a lot of free kicks. And you put it right in Jack's head, scored a goal, he turned around, and run straight back to his own position. Would not recognise in any way that you'd put the ball on a plate for him. Nothing like that.
I'm going to bring Liam in now. Liam, the impression you had of Jack as a player, he was in the 66 World Cup team, but the basic impression that John has given there of a grumpy, idiosyncratic character, do you recognise it from your time? Can you tell me about your first time meeting him, Liam?
Well, I'd met him playing against his teams, Middlesbrough and Sheffield Wednesday. The year we won the Cup in 79, we had to play Sheffield Wednesday 5 times in the Cup in the third round. It went on and on and on until... So I got to know Jack a little bit from that,
Yes.
But I really got to know him when he got the job in 86 for Ireland,
Yes.
We'd had 2 poor campaigns on their own in the qualifying for 84 Euros. Not a bad campaign, but not good either. And then a very, very poor campaign to qualify for the 86 World Cup. So there was going to be a change of manager. We thought John might be coming back, but
yes.
that didn't materialise, and Jack got the job. And I knew from the way Jack played football. See, Jack would have been a Charles Hughes disciple.
That's right.
For the listeners who don't know who Charles Hughes was, he was the director of coaching and education at the FA, and his basic coaching blueprint for English football was to get the ball forward as fast as you can, get it into the box as much as you can, and you'll have more scoring opportunities and therefore score more goals, win more matches. Very, very basic stuff. But Jack was one of the people who was around at the time of Charles Hughes who bought into that. And there was a number of them. There was Howard Wilkinson would have been another one.
Graham Taylor.
Dave Bassett at Wimbledon. Graham Taylor certainly at Watford.
Yes.
Without any doubt, yeah. So the lads who like to play football knew we could be in trouble with Jack getting the job in '86. So
yes,
I could tell. He didn't particularly like the way I played, and a couple of others. He didn't. We talked about Dave O'Leary the other day. He didn't want his defenders playing it out from the back. But as a character, stubborn, Eamon, very stubborn at best. Belligerent at worst.
Yes.
Yeah. But also could be engaging, and I think John's hinting at that. You could have a laugh with Jack. He was quite funny, and he could tell you good stories about his career and things like that. And I enjoyed having a drink with him, maybe in relaxation times, and listening to his stories. And,
yes.
To get the Irish job was an absolute dream for Jack, because we only had about 6 games a year, so he could go fishing and shooting all he wanted.
Yes.
Because that's what he loved. I got the impression he didn't really love football.
Yes.
It was a means to an end to Jack.
Yeah, John, that's an interesting point. Before we talk about that side of Jack, he had a Channel 4 hunting, shooting and fishing program. He was on the first ITV panel with Malcolm Allison and Paddy Crerand, which was very innovative and successful. The kind of the idea that you'd get 3 former players talking about the game. He was on that, and he was very forthright and blunt. But he did have a life outside of football and interests outside of football. One of the things, and just to go to what Liam said there, John, I saw him doing an after-dinner speech, and he was unbelievably funny and brilliant. I could not believe it, how good he was, and he made it look effortless. So there was that side of him, which is very curious.
Oh yeah, he was a brilliant after-dinner speaker. I mean, even the Leeds lads used to look forward to him. When somebody would be giving a few words on behalf of the players.
Yes,
Jack was brilliant at it. He had a great sense of humour in that way. Eamon. His sense of humour was made for the after dinner speaking.
Yes.
He wasn't good for practical jokes with the lads or anything like that.
Yeah.
But he was excellent. He's as you wouldn't expect him to be.
Yes.
But football wise, he loved his fishing. He loved his golf for a time. But if he hit a bad shot and he was losing, he'd walk off in a huff. Yeah. He was like a big kid at times, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But his fishing was his main thing, where he could get out on his own, nobody near him, and he'd enjoy that.
Now, Eamon, can I tell you a story about? We used to play cards quite a bit on the Irish trips,
Yes.
And we played this game called Hearts.
Yeah. And
Hearts was a game. It was 4 people played, and you played with the full pack. Everybody got 13 cards. And you had to avoid getting hearts and the Queen of Spades.
Yeah.
They were penalty points. You had to avoid it. So it was a game that you had to remember every card that had gone. The best players could remember every card that had gone. Jack used to play with us,
Yeah.
And one time he played he played the wrong card, and everybody piled in on him and gave him a lot of penalty points. And he went mad, as John said. Like, he'd walk off playing golf if he wasn't winning. He went mad. We were playing 10p a point or something like that. So if he lost 100 points, he'd lose a tenner, and he loved his money, Jack. So
yeah,
he was gone. He went mad, and I said to him, Jack, you played the wrong card. If you had to play the other card in your hand, you would have got away without getting it. No, I wouldn't know. And he got the cards, Eamon, and there was a window on the bus. It wasn't an air conditioned bus in those days. There was windows, and he pulled the window open and he threw the cards out the window.
Yeah.
And then the next day, I went down for breakfast, and he said, "Come here, you." He said, "You were right about that card. I played the wrong card." But he would never admit it in front of people, would he, John?
No, we had the same for him, Liam. Jack wasn't always right, but he was never wrong. Never. And he did. I've seen him do that. I didn't play cards, but the lads, the Revy and Don Revy and the lads used to play cards. And he did that loads of times, Steve. And they used to play it some sort of a different game that you could play a card to put him out of it. And if somebody did that when he was winning, I can't forget what, but sometimes he'd be winning and somebody would do that, and he wouldn't be winning anymore, the cards would go out the window.
Yeah, now, John,
that was Jack. Jack lived in a world of his own. About Jack, Eamon.
Yes, yeah.
I'll tell you a little story about him as well, and how I'll always describe Jack. If I was in Dublin and Jack was in Dublin, and I'd say to Jack, he was getting a 6:00 flight next morning, Jack, I'll give you a lift out to the airport. Oh, that's great, John.
Yeah.
And say, for example, a very close friend or a relative died, and I had to ring him at 10 o'clock at night and say, Jack, I won't be able to leave you out to the airport in the morning. Oh, for fuck's sake. How am I going to get to the airport then?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, Eamon? It's like, he wouldn't care about anything else. He was totally wrapped up in himself.
Now, of course, when England won the World Cup in '66, that changed everything in some ways. It was, of course, the first time England won the World Cup. Two brothers on the same team. And the following year, in 1967, Jack was Footballer of the Year, John. And I'm not sure that everyone thought that he was the Footballer of the Year.
Yeah.
Tell me about your reaction to it.
Well, most of the lads' reaction to it. Jack was again. You couldn't get to the end of him, but he was a very clever guy as well. Eamon, in anything that was involved himself.
Yeah.
He was close with the media lads.
Yes.
Really close with the media lads. And this is what the story's about. That was in 1966. 66, 67, Jack won Football of the Year with the Sports Writers. Now, if you look back,
which is a huge honour. It still is, but it was a huge honour at the time.
Oh, huge! There was no Player of the Year. It was the big honour in that at that. Oh, huge. And Jack and most of the players, funny enough, suffered the next year. Most of the players didn't play well the next season. I think they'd had a lot on that play, whatever it was. But Jack had the worst season he ever had.
Yes.
At Leeds.
Yes.
And he got Football of the Year.
Yeah.
And the joke among us, Jack was terrible playing five-a-side. He was a terrible five-a-side player. But playing five-a-side, if anybody was having a bad time in the five-a-side, or a bad time even playing, you know what players are like.
I do.
The joke was, if you keep playing like that, you're going to get Football of the Year.
Yeah. And
it was amazing.
Now, he was obviously an advocate of the Charles Hughes way of coaching, which Liam described very vividly and very, very good, actually. Charles Hughes had an acronym for how football should be played. It was called POMO, POMO, Position of Maximum Opportunity was what the acronym meant. And it meant exactly what Liam said. You get it in, you get it forward, you get it into the opponent's box, and therefore you create a position of maximum opportunity very many times, and eventually your opponents wilt. Now, I played it against a lot of Graham Taylor teams. Lincoln, Graham got them promoted through the leagues, and I was down there in that sort of nether world of the lower divisions. He went to Watford, Graham, and I played against the Watford teams. He did the same. He did it with great success. They were really hard to play against because you knew that it was going to be all in every minute of the game, and they were tough as well. And that was Jack's football philosophy. Now, I know, and you've told us many times about you and Billy coming back to get the ball off Jack, and he didn't want to know about that. How surprised were you? Because I know you hated Lillishall. Jack was one of the first players to go to Lillishall, where the coaching courses were held, where Charles Hughes would hold court. I know you hated it, the whole system. How did you reconcile that with having a relationship with Jack, who was still playing for you?
Yeah, with difficulty. Huge difficulty.
It certainly wasn't ticky-tacky football.
Lillishall, nothing against Lillishall. It's what it stood for.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the pole molding, in our day when we were kids, it used to be called kick and rush.
Yep.
But anyway, that's why. With Jack, very, very difficult, Eamon. Luckily enough, Don Reevy wasn't a Pomo man.
No.
Right? But Jack being Jack didn't agree with it at all. Didn't agree. Jack had a thing in his head, and it was his character as well. Jack saw the world through his own eyes, Eamon, in everything. In football, Jack was a big centre-half who was an excellent centre-half, but obviously, like lots of centre-halves of his type, weren't good on the ball.
Yeah.
Weren't good on the ball. So if Jack received the ball on the edge of the box, right, he'd be in trouble.
Yes.
Right? So Jack saw everybody else like that. Billy Bremner, me. Yeah. In other words, if we got the ball on the edge, we were going to lose it. So he didn't give us any credit for being able to play better than him on the ball.
Yeah.
No credit whatsoever. In other words, if you lose it, you're going to cost us a goal, which is true.
Yep.
With good players, like his brother Bobby, I said to him one time, this was Jack's philosophy on the game. Get it out of there. Right? You're going to lose it there. If you lose it there, it's going to cost us a goal. Right? And I remember having endless rows with Jack over the years. And I remember saying to him one time, Jack, your Bobby wouldn't get in your team. He said he would if he did what I told him to do. I said, but he wouldn't be Bobby anymore, Jack. But Jack, if Jack believed in something, Eamon, he believed in it, and he firmly believed in that. Because we could win, I think I told you a few times, with the Leeds team, Bremner and myself, two small fellas come up, midfield players, right? We could go 7-8 games winning 7 or 8 games, and everything would be fine. And we'd lose one game, it'd be a crisis meeting.
Yeah.
Big Jack straight away. Anybody granted? Yeah, I have. Those two little shits are coming too far back for the ball.
Yeah.
Right. Nothing about us doing what we did to win the 8 matches. So in Jack's situation, in his mind as well, if you have that, somewhere along the line, if you wait long enough, you're going to be right.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
But that's the way he was, and you wouldn't. But luckily enough, Don Reevy didn't believe in that.
Yeah.
Don Reevy believed, no, Jack, he used to say to Jack, right, Jack, if you get the ball in there, I want you to give it to them.
Right. Now, let's go to his success and as a manager. He went to Middlesbrough. They were in the second division. I was playing for Millwall, a very good Millwall team in the second division at the time. And in his first year as manager, they 73-74, they won the second division by 15 points. Bobby Murdoch, he bought Graham Souness. He had Bobby Murdoch, who had been in the great Celtic team that won the European Cup. He had a fellow up front called Dave Hickton, who was a very good player. And they won. They were magic. It was Pomo to perfection, because Murdoch and Souness had enough class. But Hickton, get the ball up to Hickton, he'd hold it up, get up behind him, and they were a very, very good team. Liam, you said, you played against his teams, and certainly that Middlesbrough team went on, and they established themselves as a decent first division team. It wasn't like a yo-yo club going up and then coming down again. I don't know how much you played against Graham or indeed Bobby Murdoch
I would have played a couple of seasons against Jack's team, Middlesbrough team, and they were very, very tough to play against. You know, no nonsense, as you say. Bobby Murdoch and Graham Souness in midfield, two really hard tacklers. You know, lads who could get up and down the pitch. And as you say, he liked to turn defenders around and then push up in behind them. And Souness and Murdoch had great football and ability as well. So they were a force. They didn't win anything in the first division. We got them out of the second division. Didn't win anything in the but they're up the top end when Jack was there, and they were a very tough team to play against. Yeah. But when Jack, I think when Souness went to Liverpool, then that kind of team fell apart. And I think Jack had an idea in his head as well that he didn't want to stay too long at football clubs. He just move on after that, you know.
Yeah,
and then he went to Sheffield Wednesday. He went down to Sheffield Wednesday. Then he brought them up from the third to the second. Yeah. We played them in the FA Cup. It was very, very hard to play against them. Took us 5 games to beat them.
Yes.
And then he went to Newcastle, where it didn't work out for him, which was a shame, because he was a Newcastle man, you know, he's a Geordie, and but that didn't work out. So but as I'm saying, to get the Irish job suited Jack down to the ground, because, you know, 6 games a year, you go and watch matches, go and watch the players playing in England, and an endless time to fish and shoot as much as he wanted. You know.
Now, we'll just briefly, because this story's been told many times before, he got the Irish job by accident, John. There was a plot to get Bob Paisley.
Yes.
And it was organised by somebody who I won't name, but a very senior FAI official organised a coup. He had 10 people. There was 19 votes in the room. He had 10 people set up to vote for Paisley. And the coup went wrong when the late Dr. Tony O'Neill of UCD, a very respected football person, he didn't sign. He reneged, and Paisley didn't get the job. In the first round, Jack got 3 votes, but the sort of cat was out of the bag, and the whole thing became a shambles. It ended up with Jack, by a process of elimination, winning. They told Bob Paisley that they'd be ringing him that night to confirm that the deal was done. Well, they had to ring him and say, "I'm sorry, Bob, Paisley, one of the greatest managers of all time with his record, you've not got it." But they didn't have a number for Jack, and they couldn't find him. And they couldn't find him until late on Saturday afternoon to tell him he'd got the Irish job. You know that story, I take it, Liam?
Yeah, I didn't know how complex it was, to be honest, Eamon, but we all thought John was going to get it.
Yeah.
And then Paisley looked like a favourite, and then it ended up with Jack. And, you know, quite a few of us thought, oh, God, you know, what's going to happen now, you know?
We want to be fair to him, but on the Monday night in the Westbury, there was a press conference to introduce him to the press. And there was a huge crowd of press people there, because Jack was he was a World Cup winner, of course, but he'd been on Channel 4. He was a big personality, and it was a huge thing coming in after Owen. And I was there as well. And the press conference was going great. And Peter Byrne, who subsequently became very friendly with Jack, he was the Irish Times soccer correspondent and wrote Jack's book, actually, later on. But Peter Byrne said towards the end of the press conference, by the way, Jack, did you know that you weren't the first choice for this job? That Bob Paisley was, and that you only got a handful of votes in the first ballot. And Jack looked at him, and he was absolutely raging. He said, "What's that going to do with anything?" And Byrne sort of shrank. Making another of the great mistakes of my life, I said, "Hold on a minute, Jack. He's entitled to ask the question. He's only asked the question." And he said, "Don't you start, you little fucker." And I said, "I'm sorry, Jack. He's entitled to ask a question. It's a press conference." He said, "Do you want to come outside now and settle this?" So there was absolute murder in the room. But He wasn't. It wasn't in a bad way, but he just didn't get it. Now, for someone, John, as familiar with journalists as Jack, you would have thought, but happily you got me back on the right side of him for a couple of years. But
the thing was with Jack, see, he didn't care how it happened. It suited him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In other words, I don't care. Jack didn't care about the history of things. I mean, the man you're talking about there was Des Casey at the time.
It was, yeah.
Actually, you've let him off quite lightly, to be honest. Because
he was the president. Yeah.
Well, he was the president, and he did a lot of harm to me.
Yes.
And totally disrespectful to me and Liam Toohey at that particular time.
Yeah, because Liam was
he
put in. He
enticed me to put my name forward for the job.
Yes, that's right.
At that particular time.
Yeah.
And he knew he was going to use me.
Yes.
In it. Now, I was very hurt about that. And Liam Toohey, two men who had been ex managers. And yes. I said to Des Casey when he came to see me, along with Tony O'Neill at the time, I said, look, I'm not too keen on putting my name forward here. Actually, you persuaded me a lot at the time to put my name forward.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'll do it on one condition, that as soon as you know I'm not in the running, just tell me and I'll drop out.
Yes.
He didn't do that. He did the very opposite.
Yeah.
He had Bob Paisley lined up.
Yeah.
He said he didn't tell me about it. Jack didn't know about it, to be fair to him. And what actually happened was there was Liam Toohey, Jack Charlton, and three was in the running.
Yeah.
Right. And in the first vote, we got 3 votes each.
That's right.
And Bob Paisley got 10, something like that.
No, he got 9. He missed out by 1. It was Tony O'Neill who didn't vote for him.
No, no, that's not. No, what happened was there was the first vote where Paisley had the job.
Right.
And Des Casey said, no, okay, well, what we do, this was to make it look good, in my opinion.
Yes.
What we'll do was, look, we'll have another vote, and you can pick one of the 3 lads, Jack, myself, and
Liam,
and they'll go against the winner.
Okay. Oh,
that's when Tony O'Neill changed his mind.
Okay.
And when it came up, Bob Paisley was out, and Jack got the job.
Okay. Anyway, it led to a fight.
Anyway, I'm only explaining that because I still feel hurt about that, and I know Liam Toohey did. God rest him.
Yes.
Felt very. We were used in a big way, Eamon.
Yes.
Which was dreadful. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
But, it was par for the course for the FAI. Liam, his first, he took over the team. I remember the first game. I don't remember you playing, but you may have. It was at home to Wales. It was a friendly. Ian Rush scored the goal. I thought Rush was amazing that day, incidentally. But the team had lost the previous game to Denmark 4-1 and had been a rabble at Lansdowne, actually, the last qualifying game. I was very impressed with the way he set the team up, looked organised and ready to run. Were you there that day?
Yeah, I played in that match.
You did? Okay.
Lansdowne, it was March or something
like
that.
Yes, it was.
Lansdowne was in a dreadful state after the rugby season, the home nations rugby season, and it was dry day, windy, and it was horrible game to play in, and Rushy scored a goal. It was a horrible match. It wasn't a very good game. I didn't have a particularly good game, and I thought, well, I won't be, my days are numbered here, I knew the way he wanted to play. He'd set that out in the few days before the game against Wales.
Right.
Told the centre-backs he didn't want to go through midfield, told the midfield, don't come back looking for the ball. And that's where it started. So I went back to, I was at Ascoli at the time. I went back to Italy. No, I was at Inter Milan. I went to the following season at Ascoli when we kicked off the European Championships against Belgium,
Yeah.
And I was really fit. The trainer at Ascoli we'd done a hard pre-season, and I was fit as I'd been, I really felt good. So I didn't think I'd be playing against Belgium. So I said, I'll go and give it my best shot. I trained well. not that you could show too much in training, because training was really, really basic. It was like shadow play. That's where you have your team lined up, but there's no opposition. And Jack had the centre backs kicking it into that area between the 18-yard box and the touchline. You know, there's a 20-yard square there. That's what the centre backs had to aim for. And Aldridge and Stapleton had to chase in there, get the ball, try and get a grip of the ball, or make the Belgians make mistakes, so we would win possession in their half. That's the way training was, and we were lucky to get a five-a-side at the end of it. Because, as John said, he didn't like five-a-sides. He didn't like them as a coach either, and all the lads wanted to have a game, get a sweater on, you know, get sharp and things like that. So we had a five-a-side, and I trained well over the 2 days. And he came to pick the team, and we stood around on the Tuesday after training. The game was on the Wednesday, and he went through the team, and he pointed at me and he said, "Ian, you'll be number 6." Now, he was terrible with names, Jack. He was terrible with names. "Ian, you're number 6," and then Ray Houghton, number 7. Aldridge, number. I said, "Jack, just a second." I said, "Jack, I'm delighted I'm playing." I said, "But Ian Brady was the Moors murderer." 9 was Stapleton, 10, I can't remember, 11 was Tony Gall. And we got a result. And I think I said to you on a program we did a couple of weeks ago, I gave it my best shot for that. And I started well, and he kept going with me from then on, you know, through the whole qualifying campaign. But we were under no illusions, you know, how he wanted the game played. You know, the training was that basic. Yeah, he told the centre backs we'd line up, and if you weren't in the team, which was terrible, you'd be standing around watching, you know, not doing anything. And then he also, what he did, Eamon, was concentrate greatly on set pieces for and against.
Yes.
And that's we became very, very good at that.
Yes.
And what happened was we started to get a few results. We drew away to Belgium. We drew 0-0 at home to Scotland. But we started to, in friendlies, we started to win them and things like that. And the lads began to buy into it, you know. Yes. They bought into it. And by the time that the campaign finished and we qualified, like we battered Bulgaria 2-0 at home, but we didn't expect to qualify. In fact, there was only 20,000 at Lansdowne, you know. Yes. They still thought Bulgaria were a shoe-in to qualify. So, but we did batter them, and he had got his philosophy across to the players, and he had some good players, Eamon. He had some really, really good players.
He did, yeah.
Players that, in my opinion, if John had, he would have done equally as well. But nobody will never know, ever know that. It's just my opinion. But he did have some really, really good players. You know, we talked about him the other day. Paul McGrath, Ronnie Whelan, Andy Townsend, Mark Lawrence, and John Aldridge. Like Aldridge hardly scored a goal for us, Eamon. Until, you know, I think it was in 20 games before he scored a goal. And he was banging them in left, right, and centre for Liverpool. So that kind of tells you the game that Jack wanted to play. We weren't going to make chances for Aldridge. We weren't going to slip him in. We weren't going to find a near post cross for him to get on the end of. It wasn't like that. Jack had this way of playing, and it was efficient, and it was very, very difficult for the opposition teams to play against.
Yes, and just from your own perspective, as a gifted footballer, one of the most gifted there's been, how much of a head wrecker was it to be getting up behind the long ball? I mean, John Aldridge famously said his legs would be down to stumps if he had to keep making those runs down the gullies into that position of maximum opportunity. It's called in that square you're referring to.
Yeah, well, it was a kind of hybrid version of what Jack wanted, that. Yes. Because we had players in the team like Lawrence and McGrath, Whelan, myself. You know, we weren't just going to boot it. You know, we were going to look for people. We're going to switch the play. And then the thing about Jack, I could see him on the sidelines and that. But if I got a ball from, let's say I picked it up in midfield and hit a ball to Ray Houghton, hit a 20-yard, 30-yard ball to Ray Houghton to his feet, Jack wouldn't say nothing.
No.
Jack wouldn't. He just wouldn't say nothing.
No.
Well, if I tried to roll one into Aldridge's feet and the centre back got in front of him and took it away and we lost possession, he'd go ape shit.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. John, do you recognise that?
Yes, totally. I mean, you see, when you look at it, well, in my opinion, anyway, as Liam says there, if he hit a good ball, it was okay.
Yeah.
Right? So Jack as a manager couldn't lose.
Yeah.
He wouldn't say anything if you hit a good ball and it worked.
Yeah.
But if you hit a bad one, he'd say, no, I told you.
Yeah.
That's what you shouldn't be doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But what he did do, Eamon, and a person, I never realised it at the time in management, personality is a huge thing in it.
Yes.
Jack didn't care about anybody.
Yes.
He wouldn't listen to anybody.
Yeah.
But he gave leadership.
Yes.
Eamon.
Yes.
He didn't leave any stone unturned where you could say, but Jack, you didn't say this or you didn't say that or you said that. He did what he believed in.
Yes.
And he made sure everybody, even Liam,
bought into it.
Not that you bought, you had to buy into it.
Yes.
Right? You see, if you didn't buy into it, you were out. Right? Now, because I would play 10 years with Jack, so I know exactly what it was like, because it was a struggle every week. Luckily enough, he wasn't the manager at Leeds. Don Reevy was the manager at Leeds. And Don Reevy would say to him, no, Jack, I want you to give it to Bremner or Giles.
Yes.
I'm insisting on you doing it. Now, when Jack became manager, he wouldn't, and I said to you, and it was half joking, Bobby wouldn't get in. He would if he did what I told him to do.
Yep.
Which would be not coming deep, not getting on. It wouldn't be Bobby Charlton anymore. Just like Liam Brady wasn't Liam Brady anymore. But Jack gave leadership. He didn't leave anybody in any doubt as a player. And this is what he wants. This is what we have to do. And that's what he was good at, Eamon.
Yeah, I want to go back to Liam just to talk about this. I think we've discussed this before, Liam, just over a beer. But I remember a key match against Spain at Lansdowne Road, as it then was, bad pitch, windy day. We won 1-0. It was a huge win and qualified us for whatever it was. But the Spanish players were coming off the pitch shaking their heads because they'd had such a torrid time. And there was a part of Jack's philosophy that, or belief system, that really was troubling for European players. That is, you knock it in behind their defenders, you get them turned facing their own goal, you get right up their asses, and you make it really hard. You don't give them time to play out from the back. All of that stuff was innovative and effective. Did you play in that game against Spain, Liam?
No, I didn't. No, and by this time I'd not gone to the. Well, I went to the Euros, but I didn't go as a player. I'd got myself badly injured. I ruptured my cruciate ligament, so
right.
I wasn't involved for another year before I got a chance to get back in the team.
Yeah.
But I was part of the squad in that game. I don't think I was sub, but I was part of the squad. But I was on the bench.
Yeah.
And he had the grass about 3 or 4 inches long at Lansdowne. He told the groundsman to not cut the grass, you know. So the Spanish hated it. They hated it.
Yes, and it worked.
Yeah, it worked because we were trying to qualify for the World Cup, and 2 qualified in those days, you know.
Yes.
And Spain had beaten us 2-0 away, and we had to finish above Hungary and Northern Ireland to get the second spot, and you know we did that, and we did it quite comfortably.
Yeah.
Playing as you say the way he wanted to play.
Yeah, now here's the thing to both of you. I'll go to you first, Liam. The players we mentioned, the players Jack had were extraordinary. Mark Lawrenson, Paul McGrath, David O'Leary, who he blanked for 3 years. But he had Ronnie Whelan, he had Stapleton, he had John Aldridge, he had Ray Houghton, both of whom he persuaded to play for Ireland. They were playing for Oxford, I think. Kevin Moran, he'd Mick McCarthy. He had strength all over the place. Kevin Sheedy.
Sheedy was a classy player. He had some great, and by that time, the World Cup qualifying kind of around, Townsend had emerged into the team. He was another. Another guy. And Townsend was an outstanding midfield player. I mean, you know, he had some really, really top footballers in his team.
But not playing in the positions that they played for with their English clubs. For example, we had a big victory in Scotland. We won 1-0. Mark Lawrenson playing in midfield scored a winning goal. Ronnie Whelan played left back that night. I don't know where Paul McGrath played. Maybe in
Paul McGrath played right back.
Right back,
Paul
yes.
And they had a very good left winger called Davy Cooper. They left
That's
Paul
right.
didn't give him a kick.
Yes.
Paul was outstanding.
Yeah.
I think I said to you before, that was probably the bbest Irish team I played in,
Yes. Yeah.
All-round Irish team.
Yes.
It really was. We had Tony Galvin on the left wing, Ray Houghton on the right wing.
Yeah.
Could go past people, but worked for the team. Myself and Mark were in the middle of the field, and McCarthy and Moran were at the back. Packy was in goal. And then the team got even better. Aldridge emerged as a top striker.
Yes.
Then you had, as I'm saying, I'm repeating myself, Andy Townsend, Niall Quinn, Big Cascarino. Yeah. John Byrne. He really had some John Sheridan, really good players to pick from. Now, I think, and I would say, people will say, he would say that anyway. I think we could have played another way and got probably as much success as Jack did, or even more. But nobody will ever know that.
No one, you can't prove a negative, as they say. But John, when you look at the players Jack had compared to the players you had, it was just, it's something. Those 10 years, particularly the first 7 or 8 of them, something golden. Going to Germany and qualifying for the Euros in '88, beating England for the first time, and also the whole sort of party atmosphere he created, the sort of joy he gave the nation, really, in so many ways, that anyone trying to make the points that Liam and I have been making, that you've been making, and we don't in any way want to be unfair to Jack, because you can't sort of prove that we would have done better. But I just want to ask you, John, in particular, you could say Jack was eccentric in certain ways, but there was a basic decency I found about him, and I was at the end of a lot of lashings from him, but that's another day's work, as it were. I would say Jack was a decent guy, and we used to go and have a drink with him for a couple of years before I got on to the David Leary situation, which was wrong in its own way. But he's a decent guy, John.
Yeah, I like Jack, Eamon. I think Jack is a straight character. He's odd in many ways. He's very, very selfish. Well, we're all very, very, very selfish. But to get back to the football side of it, Eamon, you see, Jack did what he did, and he believed in what he did. But I think he was halfway right. You could have done what Jack did, in my opinion, and still be able to play. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like in football, there's 2 things. Is when you have the ball, you don't have the ball. And I go back and I've always said from time began, when I started playing football in Ormond Square, when you have the ball, everybody's obliged in your team to make an effort to get it back, which is called putting them under pressure. Yep. Right. The second thing is, when you have the ball, you're obliged to use it as well as you possibly can under any circumstance. In other words, the centre-back on the 6-yard line kicks it out. Yep. But otherwise, you're obliged to use the ball as best you possibly can. And what my objection to Jack would be in football sense, I like him as a person in football sense, I didn't agree at all with what he did, which was to concentrate entirely on getting the ball back. And my opinion was, well, if you use it well, then you don't have to work as hard to get it back because you have the ball.
Right. Now,
that was my...
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That was my time. In other words, he had it half right. When we didn't have the ball and getting it back and putting them under pressure, we were the best team in the world. Yes. The best team in the world. And if you've got a team doing that, you're not going to lose many matches. No. But if you got them playing as well with the players we had, which was always my objection, that we could have done what we did anyway, but with the players we had, like Liam and Andy Townsend and these terrific players we had, we could have done better than we did. Yeah.
And that's
always, and that's still my thing to it. I think Jack did a big job in many ways. He led the team, as I said before. He was a leader. He didn't leave it open to anybody what he wanted to do. This is what I want you to do, and that's what managers do.
Yeah.
Now, I don't agree with it, but that's only my opinion. Of course, the team was successful, but I think we could have been more successful than we were.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make the point about, Liam, you were at Italian 90 working for the BBC. You were at the back end of your career and you'd had a serious injury. But Ronnie Whelan, for example, I'm saying this to both of you, to you and John, Ronnie had just captained Liverpool to win the First Division. Ronnie was a really outstanding player. And he didn't play in the whole tournament. Jack just took against him in some way, and we could have done with Ronnie in any match. Ronnie Whelan was such a great player. It was a terrible shame because Ronnie was at the top of his game, but he picked up an injury late on in the season before the World Cup. That's
and
right.
He was just getting over it, and then I think in
he
training,
was fit, Liam. He told me he was fit.
He was fit, yeah, but in training, I actually talked to Ronnie the other day about this, because I just wanted to be sure,
Yes.
I gave him a ring. And Ronnie said in training, he got a bit of a thigh strain, so he had to miss the first game against England in Sardinia.
Yes.
But then he was fit.
Yes.
But because Jack had got the draw and we started well, he kept Ronnie out. Ronnie only got on against Holland in the last 20 minutes, and he didn't figure against Romania in the last 16 games. So Ronnie's career, a bit like mine, Ronnie has this kind of disappointment that he didn't get to play, at the very highest level in the World Cup. He only played 20 minutes, and I have that disappointment as well. But I think if a footballing manager had been in charge, I might have played. I might have gone to Italy and played in that World Cup.
I'm sure you would.
But Jack had moved on,
Yeah, a final point to both of you. John, David O'Leary was asked by Jack, when Jack got the job, now David was a great footballer, lovely, comfortable with the ball at his feet, very quick, read the game really well, was, I suppose, one of the best centre-halves in Europe, really. Jack didn't really want that kind of thing. He asked David to go on a pre-season tournament in Iceland. David said, no, I booked my holidays. You'd left me out in the beginning. I booked my holidays. I'm not going. Ronnie Whelan and John Aldridge, and I think a couple of others also decided not to go, and they were going on holidays. He never let David back in for 3 years because of that. He said, now, that was a wrong on David, a bad wrong, John, wasn't it? David didn't even go to the 1988 European Cup finals.
But he wouldn't want Dave.
No. Yeah.
He wouldn't want Liam.
Yeah.
He wouldn't want them. He doesn't. He would see Dave as losing the ball at the back. He would see him losing the ball. He would see Liam on the ball losing the ball.
Yes.
I played with him for 10 years, Eamon.
Yeah.
Every time we lost, you and Bremner, and me in particular, you're coming too deep.
Yeah.
What about the 8 matches we won, Jack? That's all Jack could see.
Yeah.
Jack was an individual who saw the life through his own eyes.
Yeah.
And he saw football through his own eyes.
Yeah.
He couldn't see the game through Liam Brady's eyes.
No.
Or Bobby Charlton's eyes, or my eyes.
No.
Right? But he did give the leadership. And as you say, with the selection of players that we had,
yes,
it was a phenomenon. I don't think Jack ever recognised or realised the players we had, to be honest.
I'll just ask you both a question about the mark he left on the nation through those great summer adventures, 88, 1990, and again in 1994 with this extraordinary performance at Giant Stadium when we beat a really good Italian team that actually got to the final of that World Cup. I'd just like to ask you, Liam, first, and then John. My overall feeling is that there were two things happening. There was us as football people making footballing judgments, and then there was a very sort of happy, proud nation celebrating an Irish team being at a major championship, for the first time in '88, for the first World Cup in 1990, beating Italy in Giant Stadium, people having barbecues, everyone was an expert on the game. The guy from Opel, Arnold O'Byrne, God love him, was on the Late Late Show after, I think, Italia 90, and Gay Byrne, the late Gay, God rest him, welcomed Arnold onto the set and said, "Congratulations on winning the World Cup." And I'm sitting at home tearing my hair out. But I just want to put it to both of you, because I know you know the country, you love the country. Liam, he gave more than he took, and for some people, that era is remembered with great fondness.
Well, it was our big breakthrough, Eamon.
Yes.
It's been said before, but we'd never played in the European Championship or a World Cup before. We'd never got there. Yeah. So it was a huge breakthrough. A bit lucky to get there in '88 in the first one, like Scotland beating Bulgaria, nobody expected. But when he took us to Stuttgart and we beat England and we had a really good tournament, we were only 15 minutes away from being in the semi-final. And we were beaten by a fluke goal. Then we went on to qualify for a World Cup and go to the World Cup. And as you say, go to the quarterfinals. Like, we were on the world stage there, Eamon. Yeah. And I tell you what it also did was that it made FIFA realise, Ireland, it's great to have them at the World Cup.
Yes.
So all those decisions dodgy decisions that were going against us in the 80s and that, all those things disappeared. We were getting the rub of the green now.
Yes.
So Jack had a phenomenal 10 years. And I would agree wholeheartedly with John that he was a leader. You knew where you stood. And there was a good team spirit and there was a good atmosphere amongst the players. The players were happy playing underneath him, you know.
Yes.
So he brought us to the promised land. There's no doubt about that. And then, like, we've been at another World Cup with Mick McCarthy in 2002. Let's hope we can get to another one, because that's where the country belongs. And you have to give Jack an enormous amount of credit for that.
Yeah, John. On this day, his 85th birthday, we should wish him as much happiness as is possible. And he gave Ireland a lot more than he took. And he took a fair few quid as well from the circuit.
Well, that's okay.
I'm only joking.
Damon, you got to give him full credit for what he did. I'm talking about purely as a football man and what could have been better. But I realise the contribution he made to the country.
Yes.
And what I've always said about Jack was that he popularised the game in Ireland in a way that nobody had ever done before.
Yes.
In the meantime, he did antagonise certain football people, Eamon, who had followed the game for a long, long time before the people copped on to what the game was all about in our way. He put Ireland on the map in the football sense, but in the social sense as well, because he made an awful lot of people happy. Who cares about what I thought that we could have done better? That doesn't matter. Yeah. He made the country happy. He brought us to the first competition we'd ever been to before, major competition, which was brilliant. He didn't make all the football people happy. I don't think he made you happy, particularly in the way that we played. But the way that the nation got behind the team and the country to do what we did was fantastic.
Okay, and that's a perfect place to end a podcast that I am sure for many people will bring back very fond memories. We wish Jack a very happy 85th birthday, and I'm very grateful to John Giles and to Liam Brady for joining me to pay tribute to a remarkable man.